All right, well, good afternoon, Marines.
Good afternoon, sir.
All right, it's a pleasure to be with you again. I'm here again to talk to you about suicide prevention as a build-on to the Standard Marine Corps training program, which is called UMAPIT. And UMAPIT stands for Unit Marine Awareness and Prevention Integrated Training. So I'm going to give you another short piece today to talk about how we can build on to the great structure of that program, a very good program, and talk about things that can be useful for our fire team leadership. Because you as a Marine understand the concept of fire team. And even when I'm speaking to sailors, I use your terminology as I try to speak to sailors and even civilians about what it means to build a fire team. So I want to give you a tool today that I hope that you will be able to utilize as you grow in your leadership. And so the tool goes something like this. I ask people to draw a circle around them. And it's an imaginary circle. And within that circle, I ask you to place yourself and anyone else on the earth who understands the condition of your heart as it is right now. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to think about that. I designed this concept with a mother of a young man who died by suicide. And this was one of my first experiences of loss as a civilian pastor. And as I worked with this mother in the context of grief, we tried to design something that could be utilized by other people and other young people particularly that might be in the same situation that her son was in. And so she and I designed this concept, and then we began to share it with our community in Wyoming. And now, some 20 years later, it's still a concept that I share with Marines. So back to that circle. You draw a circle around yourself, imaginary circle. Inside the circle is yourself and anyone else that you can count who truly understands sort of where you are today, the condition of your heart. All right, so what I'd like you to do, and there are no mandatory answers here. You do not have to speak back to me, but I'm going to ask you some questions that will not be anything personal, okay? So what I'd like you to do is place those people within that circle, count them up, how many are in your circle, and put a name on them. And it could be a Marine, it could be a civilian, it could be your grandmother, it could be your best friend, okay? So everybody doing that right now? It just takes a few seconds to be able to draw that circle. All right, everybody got it? All right, so now what I want to ask you is if you'd be willing to share with me, not the people, not the names necessarily, but the number of people other than you who are inside of that circle when I asked you to draw that circle. All right, can you give me a number? What's your number? 7? What, another number? 5? 1? 1? 4? 2? 3? Any others? Okay, so very reasonable. All right, somebody once said 12. I said, well, all right, well, that's good. I might actually have close to that number if I started counting them up, all right, because I have several little clusters of fire teams, all right, but it's kind of hard to maintain that kind of close relationship with 12 people, okay? Here's how I utilize this tool, all right, so you have someone that you think might be isolated, all right, you can ask them to go through that small exercise and say, hey, how many people are in your circle with you, all right? Here's what I say to the ones. I say to the ones, hey, that's great that you have one person, right? But you better have more than one bridge off the island. Okay, I live on an island out here. It's got 2 bridges. And sometimes they both go down. And then you're in trouble, right? So if you've got that one person that you trust, and you're really in trouble, and that person's not available, you don't have another option. So what I do with the ones is I try to say, hey, here's the deal. Most of us, when we draw that circle, and I'll do this in my office, usually we'll have people that are just outside of that circle, right, that we haven't communicated with for a while. So I'll make it a homework exercise just for a person to reach out to somebody outside the circle and just pull them in by saying, hey, how you doing? What's going on in your life? Okay, my best and oldest buddy in the whole world, his name is Mike, all right? When we were in 3rd grade, I ran into the back of his red go-kart with my bicycle, and that was the beginning of our relationship, okay? We're both over 50 years old now, and we talk all the time. But you know, sometimes things go on in my life, and he's out of the loop. And all it takes is a phone call to Mike to bring him back into my circle. Okay, makes sense? So if you were at 1, I'm saying try to make it at least 2. And every once in a while, and I was watching, and one time I trained a huge auditorium full of Marines, and there was a salty Marine who had been in the Marine Corps quite a long time, and he gave me one of these, only I could see, and he was off over here, and he just, only so I could see, and he goes like this, 0. I don't have anybody in my circle with me. All right? And that might have been some of you. All right? So when I get the 0, I say, okay, and I did not acknowledge that Marine at all. He was letting me know, right, that there was nobody in his circle. The most important thing that I could say before you leave here today is, I'll stand in there with you, right? Can you see the power and the impact? If you're using this tool in your fire team to assess another Marine, you've got to be willing to step in that circle with them. Make sense? Yes, sir. Okay? And then you have the beginnings of a fire team, all right? Because the Marine Corps, obviously, the fire team is the smallest MAGTF in the Marine Corps, right? It's a Marine Air Ground Task Force made up of 4 or 5 Marines, right? And so what I'm saying is that even though you might be assigned a fire team, all of us have a functional fire team. And sometimes Marines can be left out of a functional fire team, like people that really mean something to them. And they can be isolated, and they can get into a situation where the hopelessness of life takes over, right? And we want to make sure that people are insulated and not isolated, and that's why I want to give fire team tools. All right, and that's why I just gave you that tool. So if you have 3 or 4 people and you can maintain that, that's great. Here's the cutting edge for me. And I study this stuff, and I will tell you that right now, as I am in this room, members of my fire team know exactly what I'm doing, because this is difficult. All right, and I've got people backing me up right now as I give this training, because they know how important this is, because other people might be able to benefit from it. Right, so here's the cutting edge. Do I have just one fire team? Do you have just one fire team? Probably not. As you grow in the Marine Corps, you're going to find the people at work who are going to be your fire team each and every day. Right? And they might not be the person right next door, or they might be. But those people that you rely on, they know you, you know them. But then when you go home to your family, you're going to have your at-home fire team, right? And that's a different mix of people. And then when you go back home, you know, like when I go back to Wyoming, my Wyoming fire team people get a hold of me. And man, they give me a good look over. And they say, hey, you look skinny, or you look tired, or you look fit, or you're whatever. But they get a hold of me, right? And they get to look at me, and they get to assess me, and they get to see what my wear and tear is. And that's a very, very healthy thing. So here's the cutting edge, that we have developed a kind of agility. So it's almost like a kaleidoscope moving between fire teams. An agility that when we go to work, we have a fire team. When I step home, I have a fire team. When I go back home, I have a fire team. And I'm always doing fire team maintenance to make sure that no matter where I am, I have a functional fire team. That's my solution. That's part of my suicide prevention. Because I want the whole Marine Corps, the whole Navy, and I want the whole civilian world to every one of them be in a functional fire team, because I think that would make a difference in making us safe. All right, so a couple of questions for you. The question is, your involvement in a fire team, how healthy is your fire team? I'd like you to be assessing that as you go out these doors today. The other thing is, look around you. All right, is there someone who is isolated and not part of a fire team? And as you go forward from this day throughout your time in the Marine Corps, be thinking about those 2 things. How functional is my fire team? And this young Marine over here, this person over here, are they involved in a fire team? And can I bring them in? All right? Because I'm looking at right here, I'm looking at fire team leaders. And I take this stuff very, very seriously, because you're going to go places I can't go. And if I train you to be more effective fire team leaders, and we can make this a safer place, then we are really combating this effort. And we are growing and making the Marine Corps and the Navy a safer place and less at risk for suicide. Okay? That's what I believe. That's what I want to share with you this afternoon. And going back to this UMAPIT training, you remember the acronym RACE? What does the R stand for? Recognize. What does the A stand for? Ask. All right, what does the C stand for? Care. And what does the E stand for? Escort. Okay, recognize, ask, care, escort. And if we're just talking about fire team leadership, and we're not talking about risk for suicide right now, The ask question is the question, who's in your fire team? And I would like for you to take that question with you as you go from here. I ask that question of civilians, and I ask that question of uniformed personnel all the time. Not only who's in your fire team, but how effective is your fire team right now? And I will tell you that that Marines and sailors that I am in contact with, we are asking one another that question because we know that we are much more effective if we have a fire team that is surrounding us. So I want to challenge you with that as we go from this place. I want to encourage you to be willing to be inconvenienced for the lives of the people around you and to maintain your own fire teams and to bring in those who are not part of a fire team, okay? So as I prepare to say goodbye to you and thank you for this training, I want to encourage you to keep training, keep fighting, and take care of the people in your fire team, and we'll be good. Thank you for your attention. God bless you. Hurrah.